Today I'm going to introduce you to the concept of green manures. The word manure back in the olden days meant fertilizer because manure was the only fertilizer. This was so much so that when artificial fertilizers came in, they called them artificial manures, but they never used them without real manure. It wasn't until they started using artificial fertilizers without manure that they had all the problems that they caused by lowering fertility. So we are going to show you this field of rye grain, and I want to be sure you know that I'm not talking about perennial rye grass. So this is the rye grain that you would make rye bread out of, and it's sown in the fall anywhere between the end of August all the way up through the middle of November. But green manure crops are always grown as a mixture with some other crops. They're not usually grown alone. So in this case we have Austrian peas. The peas are a legume and add nitrogen from the air along with carbon and oxygen, and the rye grain helps to break up the soil. This was a field of tomatoes. We pulled the cages off in October and roughed the ground up a little bit and simply broadcast the seed over the field, and then in a small garden you would just rake it in a little bit to cover the seed. You don't have to do anything else and you get this beautiful amount of organic material. This is a beautiful patch of crimson clover. So this field was a potato field last year, and after we harvested it in July, at the end of July, I made rows and planted beans. So there's time for a fall crop of beans after the potatoes, and of course beans are a legume which add valuable nutrients to the soil. We like to grow these black cocoa turtle beans, and we love to grow Taylor's dwarf horticulture bean, when that's quite a mouthful, so we just call them October beans because that's when they get harvested. After the last cultivation of the beans, I intersowed with the green manure crop. Again, we used a mixture. This time I had buckwheat, turnips, and the crimson clover seed. And I broadcast it over the field and then worked it in with a harrow. In a garden, you would just sprinkle it on your garden bed and rake it in. The buckwheat comes up real quickly in the fall and makes a white carpet of flowers, but it's killed by the frost. Buckwheat is an amazing plant in that it can use limestone and make the calcium available for the next crop lots better than other crops can do. So when we put limestone on our fields, we're just sprinkling a rock dust on the fields. Most plants can't use that, but buckwheat can liberate the calcium from this and have it available for the next crop. Clovers and other legumes have to have available calcium to thrive well. After the buckwheat is gone, the field turns into turnip, and it's just covered in a turnip crop. Turnips are the yellow flowers. You can see a few of these yellow flowers left over. Most of the turnips were harvested and given to our CSA members. Turnips work with another very important element, and that is sulfur. So sulfur is a catalyst in many biological activities. It means that if it's present, those things happen, and if sulfur's not present, it doesn't happen. So we have to have sulfur in our soils, and the turnips work with the sulfur. Now, earthworms really love sulfur, and a lot of times when we pull up a turnip, there'll be earthworms on the turnip. We love growing turnips or their cousins, daikon radish, and these then thrive in the fall after the frost, but before winter. During the winter, there's not much happening, but then in the spring, boom, up comes the crimson clover, ready to do its thing. And so it grows all March and April, and now at the end of April, it's just beginning to flower. Here you can see some of the crimson clover flowers, and this is when we would gonna mow it and turn it back into the soil. Wow, look at those worms. Yeah. So you can sort of see the crumbly nature of the soil. Oh, there's an old potato from last year's potato crop right there. You see that little white thing right there? On that root hair, that little white thing is actual nitrogen. And this is nitrogen from the air that comes into the soil through the legume crops. And it is the best nitrogen for growing your crops. Gardeners really want to have this kind of nitrogen. It really makes for good soils, makes for really good crops. This is the best and most natural way to get that valuable nitrogen into your garden. Here we have the tail end of a beautiful and bountiful kale crop. The kale collars were sown at the end of August, August 27th in this case, dutifully hoed and harvested. And then in the late October, the last cultivation with the tractors, I intersowed wheat, rye, and peas. So these crops then grow up as a green manure crop, but they don't interfere at all with the crop of kale. There are many reasons to grow a green manure crop. They're also called cover crops because they keep the ground covered. So instead of this field being bare all winter, it's had these plants growing on it. Well, these plants are all sequestering carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, and nitrogen from the atmosphere and bringing it into the soil. Remember that a plant is made up of those four elements to the extent of about 95% of it. So they're really important to have these things in our soil in an available form for our crops. So there's another reason to grow cover crops, and that is if this field was bare, those nutrients would wash away. By having the cover crops growing here, all of the extra nutrients from the compost that we put on when we were growing our tomatoes and potatoes and beans and kale and such, that is all saved because the clover and peas and rye suck it up and it doesn't wash away and leach out. So we're preserving those nutrients to help our next crops. An obvious benefit of green manure crops is the sheer mass of organic material that we're going to be plowing back into this garden. It'll be in the matter of tons. And of course, organic matter is the heart of organic gardening. Another benefit to growing cover crops is all of the beautiful things that are happening invisibly under the soil. So again, we can dig up a little bit of these crops and see what it looks like here. Wow, well look what I found. This is vetch. This is another legume that we plant in here with the rye. Both the vetch and the peas are climbing plants. They like to climb with these little tendrils that they have, and they climb up the rye stalks. So one thing that we love about rye is the massive amount of roots that it has, and those roots then finally divide the soil and make all these little fine crumbs. And so when the soil is crumbly, it's easier for the plant roots to get in through it, the nutrients are more available, and maybe most importantly, it drains excess moisture during wet weather, but holds moisture when the weather turns dry. So all of these benefits come from a very small investment in these tiny seeds. Green manure cover crops also attract beneficial insects. And lastly, there's another reason that I love to grow cover crop, because they're simply just so pretty to look at.
For inspiring garden tours, growing tips, and garden projects, visit our website at volunteergardener.org or on YouTube at the Volunteer Gardener channel, and like us on Facebook.